Well, guys, I got about 5 after. We are recording this, so if any folks want to, we can share that link with some of the other folks that may have signed in and didn't get a chance to join us today. But I'd like to start by introducing myself. I'm Vernon Thomas. I'm the Executive Director for the ASA Georgia chapter. And we've been working with ProNovos for about two plus years now. Kind of got sidetracked with all the COVID, but now we're getting back on track. And I'm going to introduce Stacy here in just a second. But before I do, I just want to let folks know that are on the Zoom meeting right now that unbeknownst probably to a lot of us, there's a area up in North Georgia, it's called it's Avalon, but there's a lot of construction software being developed up there. And I always thought it was kind of a shame that we weren't utilizing folks like ProNovos more in terms of liaison with him and giving them input and learning what they have to offer. So this is kind of the first step in that. Again, just having that in our backyard, let's see here, got another person joining, is really, it's kind of a gift. And I just, wish we would, as an organization, tie more into what they're doing. And I think that, a lot of subcontractors would find it beneficial. So I mentioned Stacy, known her for a couple of years now. And she's kind of the point of contact. She's been the liaison with ASA. And I'm going to turn it over to her, let her do a quick introduction and maybe say a few words about ProNovos also. So I'll turn it over to you, Stacy.
Thank you, Vernon. Yes, I work directly with Vernon and the American Subcontractors Association and other associations such as what he runs as president of Georgia. We did our first lunch and learn 2 years ago. Thank you to Mr. Shapiro, in person lunch and learn. But again, we were shut down COVID. So this is our second attempt on a webinar on Zoom. So thank you for attending. I do work with Vernon and providing, educational webinars such as this one. The pricing, we're trying to put together packages and best pricing for anyone who is a ASA member. I believe in ProNovos, and I do sincerely believe this is the way the future is headed. And so I like to be involved in just educating the subcontractors out there and just doing what we can to make your lives a little easier. So we're fortunate to have Kevin doing the webinar. So I'll turn it over to him, and thank you very much.
Well, tell you, let me do a little introduction for Kevin, if you don't mind, because I was looking through his resume. For a young guy, it's pretty impressive. And if you just bear with me, I'm going to go through a few of the bullet points here. But before he started at ProNovos, Kevin managed dozens of complex and high-profile projects in his career with a construction firm called Outside the Lines, where he worked as a solutions engineer. So he comes with that construction background, so he understands, cost projections, change orders, RFIs, submittals, understands the balance sheet, pretty well educated, got a mechanical engineering degree from Washington University in St. Louis, and is working on his MBA in financial management. And before he went to OTL, he was an analyst software, worked at an analyst software firm. So, what I see here is that, Kevin brings the best of both sides, where he melds the construction side with the software side. And hopefully what you all see today is, kind of the fruits of his labor there and what ProNovos does. So with that, Kevin, I'm going to turn it over to you for the presentation.
Sounds good. And I appreciate that introduction, Vern. It's good to be here today, kind of talking with everyone here, kind of as Vern mentioned, I kind of have a bit of both worlds, kind of with that construction background and more of a software mindset. And something I've really started to feel passionate about in my career is really taking some of those tools that are available in software that really haven't become mainstream within construction, and specifically where they have become mainstream in construction, they're almost always focused on at the general contractors, and the subcontractors are almost kind of the forgotten people in that picture. So it's really great to see ProNovos start to develop some tools that specifically target the subcontractors, because those workflows that subcontractors have are always going to be a little more unique than what a general contractor experiences. So with that in mind, the topic for today's webinar is how subcontractors can streamline project collaboration. Vern already did a great job kind of going through my background, so I'll kind of skip over it. But like you mentioned, I spent 7 years in construction management, so pretty familiar with all the different challenges that subcontractors are facing out there today. So before I guess we dive into the solution, let's consider the problem about why is this important? Why is having project collaboration across all your team members critical for a successful project? And there was a recent study done in 2018 that said the average construction worker spends about 14.1 hours per week on non-optimal activities. So that means work that they're not actually putting towards building a project. It's work that they're spending looking at finding the right information, 5.5 hours a week, just looking up project data, digging through drawings, RFIs, submittals, trying to figure out not, what they're supposed to build so they don't miss something. 4.7 hours a week on conflict resolution, negotiating those change orders, going back and forth with the general contractor, the architect, designers, other contractors, making sure that what gets built, everyone is in agreement on. And then the worst one is 4 hours a week dealing with
remember the phone that was found?
You can certainly make an argument.
Phone charger? Yeah. That's what I was.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
So you can certainly make an argument that some of the other stuff, looking for project data, conflict resolution, that's a necessity for any successful project. But the 4 hours a week spent dealing with mistakes and reworks, that's something that no project wants. There's no benefit to that whatsoever. So looking at it a little more in depth, almost 8.2 hours a week is spent on just communicating with project stakeholders. Now, I would argue that that's not too much time to spend on a week. If you think about it, how important it is to communicate with all the different project stakeholders, 8 hours a week is nothing crazy. It really kind of more signifies the importance of that good communication. Because when you don't have good communication, that's when you start to see those problems where you're having to do rework and fix mistakes. A senior project manager for one of our current clients had this quote where he was saying that he thinks almost half of their rework is due to poor communication. I mean, that's always the source of it. That was always my experience when I was a project manager in construction. It was never that I felt people were bad at their job or they didn't know what they were doing. It was that when something went wrong, it's because they didn't catch it in time. Somebody didn't tell the right person. There was a problem that didn't get communicated to the right parties at the right time, and things kind of got out of hand. And by the time you caught it, it was too late and the damage is already done. So that proper communication, it's really critical to make sure that everybody is on the same page and everyone knows what they need to do to make sure it's a successful project execution. So now we've kind of discussed the problem. How do we fix this? And it really is about that communication, making sure you get the right data and information to the right people at the right time. So we're going to kind of look at this from 4 different perspectives. The first perspective is how do you get information from the office to the field? That's going to be your project overview, your drawings, your documents. Once that information's out to the field, you then need to get a good reporting system to get information back from the field to the office, making sure things are done correctly, that the project was executed as it was planned. And then the other big thing for subcontractors is making sure all the information and data is flowing from the general contractor to you. That was a huge part of my job as a project manager. If I had half a dozen projects I was managing at any given time, I could be getting dozens of email notifications a day from the general contractor, just with different bulletins, different RFI responses, submittal responses, and it can really be an avalanche of information. And if you miss the wrong update, you can really put yourself in a tough situation. And then the last place we want to get the information is from our accounting system. And this one might not be as obvious as the other ones, but the accounting system is usually just about every contractor's most official record and accurate record of what actually happened on a job site, from the hours that employees worked to what the specific job costs are. So really being able to pull out that information from your accounting system and do some reporting analytics to gather some insights into what the actual project performance is, that can be really insightful. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get out of PowerPoint, because I know people are, get bored with PowerPoint. And I'm actually going to get into the ProNovos platform. And we're going to go through these one by one on different ways that you can use the ProNovos platform to help you facilitate these activities. Okay, so when you log into ProNovos, this is the page you're brought to. It is a project list page that shows you all of your current active projects. I like to always say, hey, we're construction companies. You know, we build projects. That's what we care about. So that's always what you want to see first is a list of all your projects. But once you jump into our project, we're going to use this Arrowhead project as kind of our example one today. What you're going to be brought to is this dashboard that gives you some basic information about the project. So you're going to see your project name, your project start time, your address, a map of where that project is, just some basic information that you kind of take for granted, but it's always nice to have in that one centralized location to make sure all of your teammate members can get to it. And then if you wanted to change any of the information on this screen here, where you would go is to this project information tab. So let's say I've got the wrong address in here. It's not 500 Oak Road, it's actually 501. I can quickly update it, and that way I'm communicating that information to everyone that has access to the project. So I'm not having to send out texts, emails. I make the change to one location, everybody can see it. You can also kind of use this field to enter some other additional information. So like, let's say the address where you send your invoices to is one address, but the actual job site address for deliveries is something else. You can toggle on this option here and enter in specific instructions for deliveries. So that way, you know, you make sure any kind of delivery drivers are going to the right place. I can't tell you the number of times as a project manager, I would get a call from my foreman or superintendent being like, hey, the delivery's here, but I don't know where the driver is. And I would spend 45 minutes on the phone with their dispatchers being like, oh, you've got to go up to this exit here, take a left, and then go down this dirt road. Really making sure little things like this, they have the right instructions of where they need to deliver things. That really goes a long way. Something else that I really like about this project information tab that is a great tool for subcontractors specifically is this additional info in the bottom right-hand corner here. And what this allows you to do is it allows you to go into the administration settings within your account, and you can assign custom fields here that your users can put. So let's say right here I have, hey, is this project OSEP? Let's say I wanted to add another field saying whether the project is union or not. I can select what I want that entered field to be. So I'll pick a text box, we'll add it. And now if I go back to my project, we'll see that popped up. So it's a really good tool that if you have specific things as a subcontractor that you need to track, you can include it on this page right here. Yeah, Ben, do you have a question? Hey, Ben, I think you're on mute if you want to take yourself off.
Why don't you put the directions of how to get the project directly on this overview so that delivery drivers know you go get off of I-85 on a certain exit and what you do to get there?
Yeah, so you could put this on this project information. So right here, the delivery instructions. So if you wanted to put that exactly, you know, hey, take exit 5, then it is the second entrance on your left. This will be saved in the system. So any new superintendents, foremen that go to the site, they can access this information by just going over to this project information tab. So it really is, it's great how you can kind of customize little things like that. And like I said, even if it's something like delivery instructions, let's say if there's something else that you wanted to track, you have the ability to add custom fields within the administrator tab. So you can really kind of tailor it to your specific needs. The other thing that's great about this, that's really powerful, is another really simple thing, but you can keep track of who all your team members are on the project and what their contact information is. I can't tell you the number of times I went out to a job site and I was walking the site with my foreman or superintendent, and I would say, oh, hey, we need to get a hold of this guy with the electrical sub. And he would go into his truck and he would pull out a piece of cardboard with their phone number scribbled across it. And I think this is very common on job sites. You know, you're focused on the project, you're making sure things are getting built, and you're just grabbing whatever you can to write it down for convenience for the moment, which is a totally understandable thing to do. But really having all that information in one centralized location, where if you pull this up on your iPhone and you just go to the project team tab and you want to give Casey Johnson a call, all you have to do is click his number here and it's going to start dialing and calling it for you. So little things like that kind of make it easier for your foreman and superintendent to make sure they're getting in contact with the people that they need to on a quicker basis. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of just kind of getting some general project information tab from your office out to the field. The next big one is any kind of construction documents. So the big ones are going to be things like safety documents. You have a safety manual as a company, scope of work. Maybe you want to give your field a copy of the contract just so they have it out on the job site. This document tool works a lot like how any other file sharing device like a Dropbox would, except it's all integrated in one location. So your superintendents and foremen, they're not having to have to jump across 6 different systems to find a certain PDF. You can store it within the documents tool here. And it's very simple functionality. You can go in, you can create a folder. Once you're in the folder, you can simply hit the add button, upload files. It's going to give you a modal just to drag and drop any files you want. So PDFs, Excel files, anything that you think is going to be a resource for your guys in the field, you can include those documents right here. And then they have constant access to it. They don't need to worry about connecting to your server in the office. If they're traveling in a hotel room, they can pull up those documents right here. So obviously, probably the most important construction document any field crew is going to deal with are the drawings and the blueprints. So we have a specific module to handle those drawings. So if we go to the drawings tool here, and I'm going to use this test folder, you can set up folders just like you did in the documents. What it's going to do is it's going to list out each individual sheet that I have for that drawing. So if I want to look at C100, I can pull up this drawing and it's going to show me a PDF view of that drawing. So this is a quick way to make sure the guys in your field are always working from the most recent set of drawings. They're not working from something that's 2 months old and it's been duct taped 3 times over and they've spilled coffee on it and it's, you know, it barely resembles paper anymore. They always are going to have the most recent digital copy of what it is. And another really nice feature is we have something that's called offline mode. So let's say you're working in a parking structure that's, you know, 100 feet underground and you don't have service down there. You can still pull up the drawings from the application in your phone because it's always going to save the most recent version. So, and it will tell you in the offline mode, you'll say, hey, you know, you still pull up C100, and then the next time you get to service, it will update it with any new versions of it. It's also great. You can go in and annotate anything with on the drawings. So if I wanted to add a comment somewhere here, I could quickly do it. You can cloud things, you know, draw shapes on it if you want to include sketches. It's a really powerful tool to kind of take any kind of sketches that your project manager might be doing in the office and quickly communicate it out to the field. Real quick, I'm going to show you kind of the process for uploading drawings because I think it's a very straightforward process that I think takes out a lot of the guesswork when you do this. So if I go back into my test folder here, I select upload drawings. You're going to see that same modal like we saw in the documents to basically select the files that I want to upload. So I'm going to pick my set of drawings. I'm going to give it a name, a release date, and we're going to hit upload. And basically what you'll see is it's going through and processing. And this uses a technology called OCR, where it's actually going through and looking at the text and the shapes on each individual PDF and pulling out the relevant information. So you're not having to manually enter that for each sheet. So what you'll see here is I've got my drawing. It's going to ask me for what the sheet number is. And then it's going to ask me for what the, oops, So there's my sheet number. Then it asks me for what the name of it is. I'm going to select done. And then it's going to go through and process all those drawings. So you're not having to recognize the sheet number on each sheet. It's automatically doing it for you. Once it's completed, you can go into a review to make sure all those drawings are updated and correct, that pulled the right information, that you don't have any typos in there. Usually this will take a couple minutes. It depends on how large your drawing size is. If it's 500 sheets, it might take a little longer. If it's just 3 updated sheets in a bulletin, it's probably going to happen pretty quickly. So now that that's done processing, we can review it. You'll see it basically went through all the sheets and kind of pulled out the drawing number and the name and the discipline for me. I don't have to go through and enter it manually. It's also going to flag any ones that don't look right. So if I go to these 2 sheets here, I can see SV100, that doesn't fit with the rest of my C series sheets. This one must have gotten included for the wrong reason, so I can remove it. We'll do the same thing with this one here. I'll then select all the drawings that look good to approve. I'll approve selected, and the system's going to process it, and it's going to upload it to that drawing. Processing, if you're in the office doing this, the guy in your field can send them to a print shop. They're not having to come by the office. They're going to get those updated drawings as quickly as you process it. We'll give it just 1 second here to finish going through. All right, so now I've got all my updated drawings in. So I want to hop back into my C100 drawing, and I want to show you one more feature that I think is pretty handy. So up at the top here, you'll see this bar for drawing revisions. If I drop it down, it will show that revision 2, the revision set that I just uploaded, is my current set. But it also shows me what the older versions are. And I have the option to go ahead and look at what those older versions are. And this is a really great tool to make sure you are only looking at the most recent set of drawings. But if for whatever reason you need to go look at an older set, let's say you're negotiating a change order with a GC and you want to go and look at what the version was two updates ago to see how it changed, you can go back and pull that older version and then compare it to the more recent one so you can see exactly what may have changed. Okay, so we kind of talked about what are the tools available to get information from the office to the field, that project overview, some of that basic project level information, documents, your safety manuals, your scope of work, anything else that might be relevant to the project. And then the big one is the drawings. So now that we've gotten information out to the field, we now want to discuss ways, how do we get information back from the field to the office? So the first one we'll look at, and I would say this is probably the most popular module we see people use when they start using the platform, is the photos tool. It's a really easy way to get all of your photos related to the project in one location. So you're not having your foreman just sending you text messages or emails of what might be happening on a job site. You're not having to go save those somewhere else. They're automatically getting uploaded to the system when they do it. They can just take out their phone, open up their camera, snap a couple photos and say upload to ProNovos. It's very straightforward. You can then come in and see the photos as soon as they do it in the field. So again, it's removing any of that time it takes to get the information from you. The second they take the photo and upload it, you're going to be able to see it in the office. And what you can do is you can create different albums. So this was something that I always recommend for when you're setting up a project within ProNovos, is basically go ahead and create an album for each of your cost codes or each one of your construction activities. So then that way you have a folder of everything related to plumbing or everything related to the concrete formwork. So you're not having to dig through 100 different photo files called IMG_462 to find the right photo. you have it already organized for you. And the other thing it's going to do is if you don't want to see it in an album view, you can toggle it over to timeline. And it's basically going to show you how did those photos get added during the course of the construction. So, what photos were taken last week, the week before that, and you can kind of see how your project has developed over time. And this is another really handy tool if you are negotiating any disputes with other contractors or GCs, and you're like, man, I don't remember what happened 3 months ago. You can go back and very quickly find the photos from 3 months ago to see exactly what was happening there. The last thing you can do with photos is you can assign keywords to it. So let's say you want to assign something that might be like an issue. So when you take a photo and you want to say, hey, this is a problem, and I want to make sure I'm tracking this problem, you can assign a keyword to it of issue. And then anytime you want to go in, you could type in issue into the keyword here. I don't think I have any set up that way, but you could then search, and it's going to basically pull up any photos that you've marked with that keyword. So it's another tool that you can use to basically track kind of what are the different photos you're taking on a project and how do you want to categorize them. So like I said, that's probably the most popular tool we see people use is taking those photos. I would say that's probably the first tool within the platform that foremen or superintendents adopt is those photos, just because it's the quickest way to get information from the field to the office. But probably the next one after that is the daily report functionality. And this basically is a way to just get a summary of the day's work to your office. So it's going to give you automatically what the weather conditions for the day were. So it's going to pull out from the local weather service. So you're not having to go in and say, hey, was it sunny? Was it rainy? It's going to update that automatically. But in addition to that, what you have the option to do is to notify whether there was a weather impact or not. So you can either toggle this yes or no. And then if it is yes, you can detail, hey, what was it? Was it because we were having a heat wave with high heat? We had to take more breaks during the day because we didn't want the guys to have heat exhaustion. Little things like that you can start to note just to really document it. Again, if there's any kind of issue or dispute down the road, it's a great resource to be able to go back and reference. But really the meat of the daily report tool is down at the bottom, where you can document not only what trades and crews you had on site. So let's say you had subcontractors working underneath you. You could note here what crew sizes they have, how many superintendents, foremen, journeymen, apprentice. But more importantly, you can put any kind of work details in here. So if you want to go and say, hey, we were working on the second deck of the parking structure, and today we spent all day doing cleanup. And you can start to add things like that. That way, what is getting done on a daily basis is documented. And you can also include any kind of attachment. So the most popular one here is obviously going to be adding any photos related specifically to that activity. If you add any photos to the daily report, it's also going to update in your photo album. So you're not having to do it in 2 locations. It's all going to be in one spot for you. And then what's nice is when you're done, you can email it off to whoever you need to. You can also print a PDF version of it. If, for example, you're working on a job site where you need to send a daily report to the general contractor every day, it's an easy way to kind of communicate that information to them. Well, what's really nice about this is if you go to the forms module here, what you're going to see is a calendar view of what days my daily reports were completed. And this was something that I ran into a lot when I was managing jobs, is people didn't like doing paperwork. So rather than doing the paperwork every day, what they would do is they would save it for the end of the week, and they would do it all on Friday. And by the time you do a report on Friday about what you did on Monday, chances are, it's going to be missing some information. You're not going to remember everything you did on Monday. So this is a really simple tool. We can go in and see like, hey, who's actually doing their daily reports? Are they completing them on a daily basis? You can kind of see, okay, I did my daily report today, January 27th. Shoot, I forgot to do it January 26th. So little things like this that kind of give you some insight into, hey, is everyone kind of doing what they need to get all the paperwork filed? But this forms tool, it's really more about than just the daily reports. The daily reports is probably that most common report that we get seen produced every day. But what this allows you to do is build custom forms for your field crew to complete on a day-to-day basis. So you can be safety forms, inspection forms. Maybe you even want to include things like vacation requests, or maybe it's material requests you can include here. So I'll show you one example of a really simple inspection template. If I open the form on the right here, I can create a new version of this inspection template. It's going to ask me some basic questions. Again, you can kind of custom build these, so you can really kind of tailor it specific to your needs, because we know, an electrical subcontractor is going to have different needs than a mechanical or a plumbing subcontractor. So all of these can be custom built, so you're not kind of getting pigeonholed into certain forms that really don't apply to you. But anyways, what you can do here is you'll go through assign the date. It's automatically going to pull the project name, who it's created by, so you're not having to kind of manually enter that information. And then you can say, hey, this passed, this failed, pass. You can add any comments, attachments. And what's really nice is you have the ability to add things like a signature field on the bottom. And this is great if it's anything for, like, let's say you have safety training that you're creating a form for and you need the people to sign it at the end of the day. You're basically able to still do it in a digital format while capturing those signatures. So not a great signature there for me, but you can quickly do it. You'll complete it. You have the option to either just complete it or complete an email. So let's say I just complete it here. Whoops. It's going to notify me of fields that I didn't complete. So let's go back. Let's say we pass those. And now it's going to show I have a completed form. So you can see all the completed forms within this list here. So let's say I go through and create 5 other inspection forms. They're all going to display in this list. But what's really handy is if we go back to that calendar view, it's now going to tell me what day I completed the form. So this way you have a record of when were inspections completed, when was safety training completed. You're not having to rely solely on, like, hey, we did it, I filled out the paperwork, I dropped it off on your desk, and then it gets buried under a mountain of paperwork and who knows where to find it. Right here is a great way to document what forms were completed and when they were completed. Okay, so we talked about getting information from the field of the office, as photos, daily logs, custom forms. The next big one that subcontractors have to worry about is how to get information from the GC. And I know when I was a project manager, this was where I spent the majority of my time, was just communicating back and forth with the GC about all the different documents that they had, submittals, RFIs, punch lists, new drawing bulletins. And a new tool that I think is pretty slick, and I wish I had it when I was still managing jobs, that ProNovos just created, is this function called Procore Sync. I would guess most people have run into Procore if they've been a subcontractor working for a GC. It's kind of the big monster in the space of the software that general contractors use. And it was always difficult as a subcontractor for me to interface with it, because while it's a really powerful tool, it is definitely a tool for general contractors. So as a subcontractor, if I was working with 3 different GCs that all had different Procore accounts, I was having to constantly toggle between the both of them. I was getting inundated with dozens of email notifications a day, whether it be submittal updates, RFI updates. It was really almost became a job in itself for my project engineers, just to kind of manage all that communication back and forth with the general contractor's Procore. So what you're able to do in ProNovos to kind of help you deal with that is, if you go back to your project list and open this Sync Manager tool, what you're going to see here is a tool that allows you to basically authenticate your Procore account. So when you sign into your Procore account, it's basically going to pull all the projects that you have access to in Procore. So again, let's say you are working with 3 different general contractors that all have separate Procore accounts. It's going to pull each of those projects in here. And then what you can do is you can select that project and say, hey, I want that project to sync up with this one here. And you can basically create a tie between those 2 projects. So as the GC updates any information related to that project in Procore, it's automatically going to flow into ProNovos and enter it for you. So you're not having to do that manual update. You don't run the risk of missing any critical updates. It's basically taking that whole step out of the process for you. So let's go into the Arrowhead job and see what that looks like. We're going to look at the RFIs. So if I go to RFIs, you'll see I have two tabs on the top here. I have one for my RFIs and one for Procore RFIs. So the my RFIs, those are ones that I've created in ProNovos. Questions that I have about my scope of work that I've sent off to the general contractor to get answers on. The Procore RFIs, these are going to be all the RFIs within Procore that the general contractor has sent to me. So rather than having to log into their Procore account to view these RFIs, I can look them within my own platform. So I can stay in one location to see all the relevant information related to the project. So let's say I wanted to look at this RFI number 1, conflicting details on rebar spacing. I can click it, and it's basically going to display exactly what that RFI looks like in Procore. So now I can kind of see, okay, here was the original question. This was the response. So I know the rebar should be 6 inches on center. And very quickly, I'm getting that information. I'm not having to leave one platform to go to another. It's all in one location. And you can do things like this filter on a responsible contractor. So let's say I only want to know what are the RFIs that ProNovos is the responsible contractor. I can apply that filter, and it's quickly going to take those RFIs and narrow it down to the ones that only impact me. So that's the first way that you can pull a Procore or a general contractor's Procore information into ProNovos. Is just that very simple, hey, let me see all the RFIs that they have within their Procore account. The second way, and perhaps the more powerful way, is linking two RFIs together. So if we revisit that rebar spacing RFI, let's say that's an RFI that I created that I needed an answer on. So I created it in ProNovos. I sent it off to the general contractor. They've gone in and they created that identical RFI within Procore. And now they're sending updates to that RFI through their Procore account. So when I get the answer to that RFI, I'm now having to manually take it and enter it in ProNovos. So what you can do instead with the Procore Sync is you can turn on the Procore Sync. And then right here, you can see a drop-down list of what are all the different RFIs within Procore. I can say, hey, I want that number 1 conflicting details on rebar spacing. And what it's going to do is it's going to sync all of the information related to your RFI based on what got logged in Procore. So now we can see, hey, this is all the information that the GC entered in Procore. What I originally filled out for the RFI is preserved on the right. So I can see, hey, did the GC change something? Maybe they referenced a different drawing number. They referenced 4.35, but I was really worried about 4.32. Little things like that, you can kind of just keep a record of to see if anything changed. But then the real power of it is this down at the bottom here, where these replies are automatically going to get logged in. So let's say I sent it off to the GC, my RFI, hey, one detail shows the concrete rebar is 8 inches on center, the other is 6 inches on center, which is correct. Now that the GC has it in their Procore, Todd Brown says, hey, the rebar should be 6 inches on center. They're going to send out a Procore notification. But rather than relying on myself or my project engineer to make sure I capture that and log it into ProNovos, it's automatically going to pull it directly from Procore. So it's completely removing that whole process of double entry for you to make sure all that information gets logged and is reported in the right location. So right now, what we have is the Procore Sync is working for both RFIs and submittals. We're currently also doing it for drawings. That's something we hope to have within the next month. That's kind of what I've always said is the big one, getting those drawing bulletins from the GC. It can always be kind of a bit of a process to download them and upload them into your own system. So as we roll that out, you would see it. So if any new drawings get uploaded into Procore, you would kind of see that same functionality where it would automatically sync and get tied to your ProNovos account. Okay, so we've gone over from the GC, kind of tying those RFIs and submittals together, making sure you're getting information from your GC system into your system. And then the last one that we're going to touch on here is how do you get information out of your accounting system? And kind of the two things we're going to discuss are the cost to complete and the WIP report. Okay, so if I go back to my overview tab for this project, I think you may have noticed earlier when I was going over the project overview, I skipped this project insights tab. And I intentionally did that because I wanted to save it for now when we talk about the project financials. And what this project insights tab is doing is it's basically pulling any information out of your accounting system related to the project and displaying it right here for the project manager. That was always my experience as a project manager is I didn't go into the accounting system unless I had to. You know, I wanted to be much more focused on what was actually happening on the project, you know, kind of managing the dollars and cents of it. While that was a important and critical part of the job, that was not the part of the job I enjoyed most. I think there's probably a lot of people in construction that share that sentiment. And what this is doing is making it so you can access that information all in one location. So you're not having to leave your project to log into the accounting system and look at rows and rows of data of cost data. It's all going to be displayed for you in one location. So, hey, if you're managing, you know, an RFI and a submittal and you go, hey man, what's my projected final cost right now? You can kind of quickly go to this report and see some statistics about where you are overall from a financial view on the project. So on this overview page, you can kind of see some top of the line key metrics for the project. What's your current contract amount? What was the original contract amount? What's your job to date cost, build to date? And then you can kind of see a chart of how you're tracking month over month. It's also going to give you a breakdown based on your different cost classes. So your labor, material, equipment, how are you performing? Are you over budget, under budget for those specific items? And then it's going to do the same thing for your cost codes. So based on each cost code activity, how are you performing on rough plumbing? How are you performing on electrical? It's going to give you a breakdown on what your revised estimated cost is, what your job to date cost is, and what your projected cost is. I think it's super great to have this snapshot view directly in the project. But what I really love about this functionality here is this forecast tool. And what this allows you to do is it allows the project manager to go in and make adjustments to where they think the project is going to end up. So for example, if I'm looking at my material budget and I'm looking at cost code 30126, plumbing, excavation, and backfill, and I say, hey, as a project manager, I've brought out everything I need to related to this. I saved $5,000 on my buyout. I can go in, make the adjustment here. It's going to update my projected cost at completion and what my remaining cost to complete is. When I accept the changes, it's going to go back and it's going to update on this financials tab right here. So what that's allowing you to do is it is allowing the project manager to go in and do their cost to complete. And this is something that I always experienced as a project manager was we always were kind of stuck between two options when project managers would go and update their cost projections. You could either do it within the accounting system, which, you know, that was a pretty surefire way, but project managers always weren't the most nimble at navigating an accounting system. And you also had to kind of consider, you know, hey, if you make the adjustments there, those are often final adjustments. They're going to reflect on any financial reports that you have to file. You really want to make sure those are set in stone. So it kind of causes project managers to be more conservative as they're making their adjustments. And then on the other end of the spectrum was doing these adjustments in Excel. And that was always frustrating because it basically kind of, whenever you download the information from your accounting system to Excel, it was always slightly behind. You know, maybe it was only a day, maybe it was a week, but it was a static snapshot of what were your project costs at that time. And then the other thing with Excel is Excel's a great tool and it allows you to do a lot of different things, but that also means any project manager that's doing their updated cost projections in Excel are going to kind of develop their own way of doing it. So, you know, if you have 5 different project managers all sending you different Excel sheets, it just becomes a bit of a cumbersome process to kind of understand what each one is doing in each of their updates. So having a tool like this, where it's still on a platform that's centralized, that's pulling the data in real time from your accounting system, and it's kind of in a standardized way, but it's not that kind of official record that your accounting system is. having something like this like kind of be your project manager's sandbox to go in and kind of do that what if analysis to really come up with an accurate cost projection is something that I think is particularly helpful. So that's kind of one way that you can look at the project financials within your project. What's great about it is you have a lot of functionality within the system to build custom reporting. So let's say that you wanted to look at kind of some different metrics than just that standard cost to complete. We can build custom dashboards that show different information that pulls that information directly from the accounting system. So for example, right here is a project overview that's giving me some information, again, just on my budgets, change orders. I can see how much I'm spending in labor on a month-to-month basis. And then I'm also combining it with some project management metrics. So how quickly am I processing submittals? How quickly am I processing RFIs? What percentage of them are overdue? Again, kind of taking some of that overview project metrics across the project, not just looking at the financial, but combining it with that project management level view as well. We can kind of display it all in one information. And when we build these reports, what we always think about is you always want to ask why. You want to do that root cause analysis. If I'm looking at my labor budget, I want to say, okay, well, why is that? Am I running over budget? And what we do to kind of facilitate that is we create what we call it drill down reports, where you can select a certain object and it will kind of drill down to the next level of detail. So on this one here, now I'm only looking at my specific labor detail. And I can see I have a widget in the top right here that shows me what are the cost codes that I'm over budget on. So I can say, okay, cost code 033004, I've gone way over budget on that. Let me see what's going on there. I can quickly click on it and it's going to filter out all the information to only show what's related to that project. So now I can see, okay, I had a budget of 531 hours. My job to date hours is 711. And not only did I go over budget on my hours, but my labor rate, I originally only estimated $70.52, and my job to date labor is closer to $78. So very quickly, within a couple of clicks, I can kind of get to that view of why I might be running over on a specific code. And that's really what you want to do with any kind of analytics when you're looking at your accounting data is you want to start at that macro view, how is the project performing, and very quickly get to that micro view to kind of understand why that is, what's driving those overruns or those cost savings. So we kind of talked about very specifically looking at project data based on your accounting information. The last thing I want to touch on real quick before we finish here is a WIP report. So if I exit my specific project and go back to my project list, you can see I have this reporting tool right here. If I select this, what it's going to do is it's going to bring me to a page where I can see a WIP report of all of my active projects. And this kind of opens up a window into a whole nother bunch of options where you can start doing corporate level analytics. So, the WIP report is always going to be that most popular one, but we've also created reports for AP, AR, revenue projections. There's really a lot of different ways that you can kind of look at all the information coming out of your accounting system. Okay, so that was the last one we had to cover, getting the information from your accounting system. So we kind of ran through all four of those. And part of, I think, what's most important is having all four of those different components happening in one location. The more different platforms and systems you have to hop between, the less likely it is each of those steps is going to happen. So really, that's one of the benefits of ProNovos is you're not having to go across 6 different platforms to find out what's happening in your project. It's, you go to one location and you can access everything, drawings, RFIs, submittals, your cost to complete, any photos, it's all in that one location for you. So I guess real quickly before we end, Fern asked me to kind of go over what the pricing of the platform was. If you were looking for just the base platform, so most of that functionality I went over today, the photos, daily reports, drawings, the project overview, that's $25 per user per month. If you wanted to add the Procore Sync functionality, where you're automatically pulling those submittals and RFIs from your general contractor's Procore accounts, that adds $25 a month. And then Foundation is a accounting system. I don't know if anyone on here uses it. but that would also be $25 a month. And that's kind of where you're pulling all of your project financials to see that reporting at the very end. But we also offer a free trial for 30 days if you kind of want to just sign up and try out the platform for free. So I guess as I wrap up here, Stacey, I'll pass it over to you. Thank you everyone for joining. I hope you got some value and insights out of everything we went over today.
Thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate that. And if anyone has any questions, John, are we able to, or Vernon, can we open it up for any questions?
Yeah, I was just going to say that if folks do have any questions, yeah, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, Kevin, is there a way in your system so that if you start to go over budget, say in labor, there's something that alerts the project manager so he can take action before the end of the job, sort of like a red light or a fire alarm or something wakes him up and says, whoa, I gotta look into this right away.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great thing I like about the business intelligence tool we do to produce these reports is you can do exactly that. So here's a real simple example. I'm looking at my WIP report and I can see my overbillings are highlighted in green and my underbillings are highlighted in red. So we can kind of enter in some internal logic to basically say like, hey, if you're underbilled on a project, send that flashing red light that you're underbilled. And you can do that in a lot of different ways. I would say one of the most frequent requests we get when we do kind of custom analytics for contractors is to build like what they call like a project scorecard, where it's kind of tracking 10 different important metrics across the project. And you almost get like a green, a yellow, or a red indicator, you know, whether you're good, you're getting into trouble, or you are in trouble. So yeah, it's a great way to kind of, you know, be that blinking red light that something might be going wrong.
Thank you.
Anybody else? It can do a lot. I know there's
Does
one
this-
more question. Thank you.
Hi, this is Yesenia, NTV Mechanical. Does it also have the ability to hold videos? For example, if you want to send a video communication from the office to the field, does it have that ability as well?
You know, that is a really good question. Let me see if I want to say you should be able to do it in the documents tool here, but let's see. Yep, MP4. So you wouldn't be able to do it in the photos module, but if you wanted to upload the video under the documents, it does accept video formats.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else?
Okay, if there are no more questions, if you do have any questions that come up after the fact, please just go ahead and just email it to me, or just, you know, you can go to the website at ASA Georgia and use our contact information, and I'll forward it on to either Stacy or Kevin. Also, we can follow up, if the folks that were on the call, we're talking about doing like a little survey too, just to get your feel for what you thought about the presentation, the software, and I think that'll be helpful to, to ProNovos and to ASA. So anyway, Kevin, I do appreciate your presentation there. It's pretty intricate, a little bit more than what I thought. And we've been talking about this for 2 years now. So anyway, if there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to adjournment. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.